Live from KCAU TV, your local election headquarters in Sioux City, Iowa. This is ABC 9 News at 10.
And good evening again. Thanks for staying with us. Here are your local election headquarters. I'm Tim Seaman.
And I'm Jenna Renstrom. We have winners to get to in Iowa, Nebraska, and South Dakota. But first, we want to get started with a race that's been at the center of our political coverage this midterm election.
Bruce Braley and Joni Ernst neck and neck for weeks, and still tonight as well in the U.S. Senate race. We'll begin by taking a look at the latest numbers there. Last time we checked, Braley with a slight advantage, and that's about where it stays now, within 10% of each other. The early numbers, just 99 precincts reporting so far. And as we mentioned, the Democrats with a good advantage in that early get out to vote absentee ballots.
That's right. It certainly doesn't tell the whole story, as Joni Ernst was so popular on the western side of the state. We want to take a quick live look in Des Moines at what's going on there, the Democratic and Republican watch parties. First, a look at the Republican watch party. They have the momentum tonight. Joni Ernst and Terry Branstad are among the Republicans at that GOP event at West Des Moines, at the West Des Moines Marriott.
Bruce Braley and Jack Hatch are both with other members of the Democratic Party at the Hotel Fort Des Moines, and we hope to get to that just a little bit later tonight to give you an image of what's happening on the Democratic side of things tonight. At this point, we do want to take time once again to reintroduce you to our political expert that's with us tonight.
That's right, Valerie Hennings, assistant political science professor from Morningside College. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you.
We know you've been watching these races not only locally and in Iowa, but how they're kind of telling a story statewide, and Republicans are looking to be taking the advantage so far.
Absolutely, especially as we're looking at the U.S. Senate. To put look at the larger context of how the Republicans are doing. At this point, we have projected 5 pickups, which gets us only 1 seat away from the Republicans taking the majority in the U.S. Senate, which is a big story at this point.
Is part of that, just a quick thought for you, at the end of the last election 2 years ago, there was a lot of talk that the Republicans had to get their act together.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Did that happen, or is this just a campaign against the president's administration? People are so displeased.
I think in many ways this is a typical story that we see with midterm elections. Oftentimes it's a decision against the incumbent as well as the president's party and the party in power. However, we've also seen a great deal of efforts when it comes to the Republicans getting their get out the vote efforts, their ground game put together. And I think we're starting to see a little bit of that across the country in different races.
Valerie, thanks so much, and we'll be checking in with you throughout the evening. Right now, we want to get to one of those races that has been called. Terry Branstad projected to win his 6th term in the Iowa governor's office, and no surprise there as he led opponent Jack Hatch for all of the campaign season.
And of course, the governors in Nebraska and South Dakota also have been declared. Here's the Nebraska race with Chuck Hasselbrook and Pete Ricketts, and Ricketts has been tabbed at this juncture this evening. It happened quite a while ago, actually, that Pete Ricketts has been tabbed as the winner in Nebraska.
Also in South Dakota, a Republican stays in power in the governor's office. Dennis Dugard has won another term, winning handily against Susan Wismer, the Democrat. And now we bring things back here locally to a couple Woodbury County supervisors races that have been hotly contested.
After years of Democratic control and years of power, some young power coming in at the county level with the Board of Supervisors this year. At least that was the attempt, and it looks like it probably will happen.
Jeremy Taylor, who formerly represented Iowa in the State House, looks to be, is beating George Boykin, who's been in office since 1983. Jeremy Taylor, now the Republican, with 60% of the vote right now. And then on the other side of things for District 4, that supervisor seat, a little bit more close. These are the two young candidates. Tim was talked by Matthew Ung, the Republican, who has 54% of the vote right now.
Neither of those men has reached 30 years of age yet, so there's where the youth comes from there. And again, those results coming in at the Woodbury County Courthouse, and that's where our Mo Hyder has been spending this evening. I want to check in with him and get the update from there. Mo?
Guys, one of the races that's really close is Woodbury County Supervisor's race for District 4 between Matthew Ung and candidate Alex Waters. I'm here live with Alex Waters. Alex, it's super close right now. You know, what's going through your mind at the moment?
It's just a really close race. We're just watching the results, waiting for everything to come in.
Yeah, and something that's this close, you prepared and worked so hard for this. How do you prepare yourself for moments like this?
Well, I mean, you got to lay the groundwork and trust that the voters will voice their opinion and just work hard.
And regardless of the outcome, what's next for you at this point?
I'm going to focus on my career, focus on all the nonprofits and organizations that I've been a part of, and look for other ways that I can give back to the community. And yeah, I'm just excited to continue to be a part and give back.
All right, thank you so much. We'll have more updates for you later on in the show. Back to you guys.
Thanks so much, Mo. And again, to recap, Ung and Taylor leading those Woodbury County Supervisors races right now.
And we want to switch ahead now and go back to one of the national races involving Iowa, and that's the U.S. House race in District 4, where Steve King, the incumbent, challenged by first-time candidate Jim Maurer on the Democratic side. The two had a spirited debate a couple of weeks ago, but Steve King handily out in front early on, I guess, just 88 of those precincts reporting so far. King, of course, first elected back in 2003 and has had a firm grasp on the 4th district seat.
Switching to South Dakota now, or we'll take a look at that Iowa Senate race one more time. $80 million plus was spent on this race between Bruce Braley and Joni Ernst, and that tells the story. It's been close the entire time, and right now Bruce Braley leading Ernst by 2 percentage points, but that's still with many precincts yet to report.
Also tonight from South Dakota, the U.S. Senate race there declared earlier this evening to Mike Rounds, the former governor there on the Republican side, easily defeating Rick Weiland. Weiland, who actually has, most folks think, lost votes in this election to the incumbent, or I should say the independent, and that was Larry Pressler, taking some votes away from the Democrat.
Republican Ben Sasse has captured the U.S. Senate race in Nebraska with 61% of the vote. Ben Sasse, the Republican, he beats Dave Domina tonight, the Democrat.
Oh.
And in Nebraska's U.S. House District 1 race, Jeff Fortenberry, the incumbent and well-known Republican, retains his seat with 65% of the vote.
Adrian Smith has claimed a seat in the U.S. House representing District 3 out of Nebraska. Again, just 111 of the precincts reporting, but he has been declared the winner over Mark Sullivan, the House representing District 3 there, Sullivan out of Doniphan.
And in South Dakota, Kristi Noem, the Republican, who was first elected in 2011, has been elected to another term representing South Dakota in the U.S. House.
Iowa's treasurer race, one that of local interest here with Morningside professor Sam Clovis after a very successful run in the Senate primary, finishing second to Joni Ernst, submitted into the treasurer's race, and Michael Fitzgerald is going to hold off that popularity contest with Sam Clovis as the longtime treasurer on the Democratic side, out in front somewhat decisively at this point over Clovis.
As Tim mentioned, Sam Clovis ran against Joni Ernst in the primary. Right now, she's trailing behind Bruce Braley, but with only a few over 400 precincts reporting. As we keep mentioning, that is such a close race in Iowa, and that's when we want to turn to our Valerie Hennings, who is a Morningside political science professor. Tell us some things as we can look forward to in this race, and what Ernst needs to do and what Braley needs to do to really capture that seat.
Well, when it comes to what they can do, at this point, they have both done a wonderful job, and I'm sure their campaigns are very pleased with the past few weeks. They've stayed on message, and they've really been speaking to those undecided voters, which are exactly the ones that will be deciding the results this evening. So at this point, we're waiting to see how the results are coming in. Looking at particular areas of the state, we would expect Braley, as you've been reporting throughout the evening, to do well in more urban areas, more urban counties, and then with having Ernst doing better in more rural, as well as the western side of the state.
Before we go back to Des Moines, another quick question for you. Throughout this, the women have supported Braley, according to the numbers, more than they have what would be the first woman to serve in Washington from the state of Iowa. That seems odd, yet she seems to be the one favored tonight.
Yes and no, because what that story also tells is a partisan story. We also know that women voters tend to lean Democratic, and I believe that what we're seeing there is the difference in partisan choice. We know when it comes to voters' decisions, partisanship is a major cue.
Interesting.
Thanks so much, Valerie. And we do want to take things to Des Moines now, where our Allison Warren is standing by at the GOP watch party. Allison, how are things going there now?
Jenna and Tim, people here very excited, feeling very positive, having just heard moments ago from Governor Branstad and Kim Reynolds saying, that they expect Iowans to get back to work immediately. Work is not done. The crowd was chanting 4 more years. Very excited, obviously, to hear the news. And of course, this is a historic night for Governor Branstad, now in his 6th term as the longest serving governor in the history of the United States. But now they're focusing their attention to some of the bigger races in the country, including, of course, the U.S. Senate race here in Iowa between Joni Ernst and Bruce Braley. Very heavily focused on that. The crowd cheering as they hear about other Senate races, but waiting to hear more numbers as, that race still hasn't been called. But they are feeling still very confident. The campaign says they were feeling confident about Branstad, and now they're just hoping they can celebrate an Ernst win as well. Back to you guys.
Thanks, Allison, and we'll continue to check in Des Moines as the numbers come in. Now, it's not just the candidates that were on the ballot tonight. Some pretty big issues that voters were voting on at the polls.
That includes the Nebraska Measure 425, and if you're not familiar with it, it's an initiative to increase the state minimum wage from $7.25 an hour to $8 this coming January, and then up to $9 a year later. And this was one of those measures that was early on checked into the win column, as the Nebraskans have voted for that measure.
South Dakota Measure 18, also to increase the minimum wage from $7.25 an hour to $8.50 an hour starting in January. Also, voters are passing that measure with 53% supporting. South Dakota Measure 17 to require health insurers to include all willing and qualified healthcare providers on their provider list. That also passed with an overwhelming yes vote in South Dakota tonight.
And Steve King now has been projected the winner in that U.S. House District 4 race here in Iowa. King, the incumbent, with 60% of the vote at this point of the evening, 60-40 in front of the Democrat Jim Maurer, the war veteran who is making his first attempt at a political career. And King has been declared the winner tonight as the votes continue to come in, and we'll be checking in with the King party at their celebration this evening coming up in just a little bit. Again, they are gathered here in Sioux City at the Stony Creek Inn, and we have a reporter there. We'll check in with them just as soon as we can.
And not a surprise there, King, we spoke with him yesterday. He seemed pretty confident going into this next term, already looking to the future and how he'll serve the 4th District.
Got probably as good a challenge as he's had since he was elected the very first time there, as Maurer has done a good job. The debate just a couple of weeks ago was highly talked about across the state. So all of that coming to an end tonight with King there, projected now the winner.
More local numbers for you in that Woodbury County Board of Supervisors race in District 2. Again, it looks like Jeremy Taylor will be capturing that seat that's been held by George Boykin since the mid-'80s. Jeremy Taylor, the Republican and former House representative for the state of Iowa, with 60% of the vote right now.
That's an update for right now. We'll have much more coming, including more live reports from around Sioux City and Des Moines. But in the meantime, we'll take a quick break. We'll be right back.